Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Hey, everybody. How are you today? I am in my studio in New Bern, North Carolina. This is Eating at a Meeting and Thrive Meetings and Events. And I am in studio today by myself. Wi-Fi has been down in our house, so it's been a little hairy trying to get things back in order. The guy came yesterday and said that lightning had struck the box outside. It's been crazy. So I am here by myself today, which is good. I'm excited. I don't know how many of you saw a couple of weeks ago, it actually was on my mom's birthday, I did a live webinar with Meetings Today magazine and Tyler Davidson. And actually that's Wednesday. I was broadcasting live from the beach house on our vacation, and my Wi-Fi went down there as well. And I did it all from my phone, but which was, technologically challenging, but we pulled it off and was able to do the webcast thanks to just the regular Wi-Fi internet connection from AT&T. Anyways, so from that webinar, we covered A to Z, things on how to manage dietary restrictions, food and beverage throughout, whatever you're doing, but really kind of how to manage the dietary needs. And we went, A through accessibility to Z zones and everything in between. But as the webinar went on, there were some questions that were asked that I didn't get to, and I've actually written up answers to all of those questions that will be posted on blog posts as well, and onto Meetings Today's website as well. If you need to, or you want to catch that presentation, and then let me know too, because it is on demand, let me know as well after you watch it if you want the slides, because I actually did it from my phone. My slides did not appear on the presentation, so I am happy to share those slides with you before or after you watch the presentation, so that you can follow along. I'd be happy to do that. And I just posted those there. You can actually watch the video from this link on Meetings Today. And I actually want to go back and thank Meet AC and Tropicana Las Vegas for sponsoring my session. Meetings Today can't pull these off without speakers as well, but also without sponsors. Thank you to Meet AC and Tropicana Hotel for sponsoring my session on Meetings Today. My goal with this podcast is to actually talk about all things food and beverage. It is meeting planners and anybody who's planning a party is probably your number one expenditure on your budget. And with that, we need to, in my opinion, spend more time on the food and beverage that we eat and choosing what we're serving to individuals. We have a duty of care as a professional who's organizing food and beverage for an event, but just you have a duty of care to take care of the people that you're serving food to. And there's a lot of things that go into that. So the guests that I have on and the questions that I answer and ask are related to helping people who do buy the food and beverage for other people make safer, more inclusive food and beverage experiences. So with that being said, again, I'm here today and I'm going to answer some questions that were asked on the Meetings Today webinar on July 29th called Food and Beverage 101, Managing Attendee Food Preferences and Dietary Requirements from A to Z. The questions that I were asked don't really follow the A to Z, but I'm going to just ask them, or I'm going to read the questions and then I'm going to give you my opinion on the answers to those questions. So, first question, how do you manage registrants not telling you that he or she has dietary needs, or their assistants who register them are not telling us as well? Let me tell you, that is a question that I get all the time from anybody who's organizing a meeting. Get very frustrated by those who do have dietary restrictions not communicating their needs in advance or communicating their needs at all. And when they sit down to a table, like, oh, by the way, I need a vegan meal, or by the way, I am gluten-free and I'm allergic to beef, right? Well, for those who have dietary restrictions, let's start with that. We meeting organizers, whether it's your mom or, me who's planning a convention for someone, we need to know your dietary needs in advance because we actually have to plan that menu. We want you to sit down at a table or mingle in a cocktail reception, hopefully soon, with your colleagues and with your family and friends. But we can't provide for you and give you something to eat if we don't know that in advance. And when you go to a restaurant or you're at home, it's a little bit easier to figure that out and do something on the fly. But when you're planning an event for a couple thousand people, planning a meal, a special plate or a personalized plate for you gets a little bit more challenging with a commercial kitchen that's probably, way off from where the meeting room actually is and has to be taken up, and it can take time. We don't want you to have that bad experience. So communicating your needs in advance via an online registration system, picking up the telephone and calling the event organizer and saying, hey, I've got these needs. What do I need to do to let how can I help you in preparing something that's safe for me? Whether that is a food allergy, it's a vegan dish, it's a religious-based practice, if you're kosher or halal or Rastafarian, or if you're paleo, or you have a medical condition like that requires you to eat a specific way because you're going to have surgery. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed my friend Elisa Hayes on accessibility to food and beverage functions. And the event that we met, she's in a wheelchair, so it was precarious the way that we met that way, but she was also about to have a kidney transplant. So she had to eat a specific way. And the event we were at, there was no one there to answer questions about the food, and there were no labels on the food. So there's a variety of different ways, but we need to communicate that in advance. And planners, getting back to this question too, is how do we handle registrants who don't tell us in advance? So that comes to designing your event registration system. And there's two schools of thought here. One is mine and one is my friend Kyle's, Jordan, who is the managing director of learning and conferences for the Financial Planning Association in Denver. And I actually agree with his point of view as well. So you got to figure out how you want to do it. So the first thought process is when you're asking about dietary restrictions, you need to make sure, I say, make that question mandatory, because one of the biggest headaches that we have as planners is that somebody doesn't tell us in advance. And so it's a hassle to get that done. But if you make that question mandatory for everyone, that's going to save you the time and the headache of creating personalized plates at the end of the day, right? Or at the last minute. And it allows individuals, you need to make sure that you say none or non-applicable, but it quote unquote forces people to tell you one way or the other up front. Now, Kyle, and I do agree with this again, Kyle said to me, he's always cautious about questions where you're asking someone to disclose personal or demographic information. Dietary and accessibility needs, even, religion, and not that you're going to ask religion, or you might ask religion on a event registration form, but making those questions mandatory. He's very hesitant about that because that should be someone's choice to let you know. Now, continuing on to his point is that the event registration system and the event itself should make the attendees feel comfortable enough in the way that you're describing it to disclose the information. So that means we need to create safe experiences via our website and the information that we provide, to saying, by providing this information for us, we can ensure that you have and you can enjoy a full experience at our event. So giving us this information in advance helps us make sure that you're 100% included in that event. So I really do love Kyle's answer and his reasoning behind that. But it also, and I also, one of my things too, is that we also need to, at that point, clearly label the menus. We need to clearly design the menus as well that are free of some of the top allergens. So how can you make your lunch or your break or your dinner completely free of peanuts? I think you can do that. Or if it's completely free of eggplant or whatever that allergen is that somebody has, is there an easy way for that chef to make it completely free of, so they don't need to have a personalized plate for that meal function? But we need to label as well. So in the States, we're not required to label on our buffets the food that we're serving, but in the European Union, they are required to label on unpackaged food, i.e. buffets and buffets and restaurant menus. And even when you go into a quick trip gas station to get food, they have to label it, or they have to provide the information about the food they're serving. But, as we go through a buffet line in the US, and when we do go back to going to buffets, but even when we're in COVID, we're planning it. If it's an action station, the food should still be labeled, and it should say seared steak, marinated in, and you don't have to list every ingredient that it's marinated in, but list the top 8 allergens at the minimum, and then the top 14 if you've got individuals from the EU or individuals who have told you that they have specific food allergies. So if somebody says that they've got garlic allergy or an onion allergy, and that steak is marinated in that, make sure that you list it there, and then that you actually have a plate for that person. But communicating that information is really, really important. And that gives your attendees the ability and the opportunity to be included in that food function without necessarily having to ask for a personalized plate or waiting for somebody to bring them one. So that was a very long-winded answer to how do you manage registrants not telling you if they have dietary needs or their administrative assistants. And it really goes back to creating an environment online and communication methods that's saying we need to know this in advance so that we can make sure that you feel included in this event, even with the food and beverage we're serving. So I hope that helps answer that question for some. I am going to actually give you, if you want to connect with Kyle, he's a great meeting planner. You can learn a lot from him as well. Facebook user said, wish the US had all the labeling everywhere. Oh, so heartily agree with you on that. It makes it very hard not knowing what you're serving or not knowing what you're eating. And I loved going to Whole Foods to the hot display menu, right? Or hot display area of the grocery store and ordering my food, because they actually had the labels there and they did list every single ingredient on there. But at the bottom of it, it says, contains soy or contains wheat. I loved that because I was actually able to read it and make my decisions before guy or lady behind the counter was done serving the other person. I could then actually say, hey, I want this, this, and this, without actually having to ask that person a zillion questions about, hey, what's in this and what's in that. And there are some places that you go that they actually have to print the label out like you're going to buy it before they can actually tell you what's in the food. And they've done that and they've packaged it up for me. And then I read the label and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't actually eat this. So I need to give it back to you. So it actually eases that whole process for the attendee. So now here's another question. What if a food allergy is the allergy of a spouse, someone not registered for the event, but the paid attendee made a note of their spouse's name and needs? There are no spouse events on your agenda. Well, you need to just say, hey, our food and beverage functions are only open to the attendees. And we don't I think you have to just go back and tell them that this is not open for spouses to attend. You can maybe, if you are, you could send them an email information about the hotel that you're having that event in, or the convention center, and say, hey, here's our contact at the hotel, or here's the chef's information. Reach out to them if your spouse is going to be eating in the property, so that they're aware of your spouse's needs while they're enjoying the time at the event outside of the meeting space. But that's a good question. We used to have spouse programs all the time, and I think some incentive trips still do. But I think being clear and providing that information to them, who your contact is at the hotel or convention center, would be, very well received by that person. But I'm going to put that question back up there. Something just popped into my head. Now, if that spouse is like anaphylactic to some kind of food and that person can't be in the same room with them, that attendee, that's a touchy subject. And that's a hard one to answer because, so say I'm married, I'm not, but say I'm married and I go back to my room and my husband or my partner is allergic to garlic, right? Or sesame seeds or something. And I had food that had garlic and, let's just say, garlic hummus, right? I would think that person who is married to this person who's allergic is going to go back to their room and brush their teeth and take all the necessary precautions that they would if they were in their home. Because you can have somebody have an allergic reaction by kissing them or by, touching them if they're anaphylactic to touch of that. So I would just put those precautions out there. All right, Terry. Would love to know the difference between the fish category, specifically sustainable, what's the opposite, or some of the other categories you sometimes see listed with fish. Still confused about what fish we could be looking for. That is a very good question. The Today Show this morning, it's fish, it's sharks. They were talking about how there's areas in the world that sharks have completely disappeared, and it's because of overfishing. So what we need to do is, there's a really good app, the Monterey Aquarium Seafood Watch is a great app to, you can put it on your phone, but it's a great website to also look at to see what's around you in the sustainable. So, and Terry, just bringing Whole Foods back up again, you can go in there and they have their sustainability watch on, is this farmed? Is this, raised or wild caught in the Atlantic or whatever, paying attention to those. Seafood Watch is one of them. There's a couple of other apps out there that you can do the same thing. But Terry, I'm going to find an expert and have them come on Eating at a Meeting to talk about that, because I personally don't know enough about it to do that. But depending on where your event is, find that fishmonger, in the local community and not necessarily the chef at your hotel, but find the local fishmonger who might be able to answer those questions for you of what's in season, and what is, best to eat that's local from your area. But that is a really good point. And Hathaway, I'm mentioning your name here, so write that down for me, please, if you can. And let's find a sustainable fishmonger who can talk to us about that and help answer Terry's question directly. But that's a great question, Terry. Thank you. Okay, so the next question that I wanted to address is, how do you recommend this in social events when there isn't a main registration? If you're getting guarantees from your direct point of contact or client, do you ask the clients for guest information to contact them directly? This is a great question for social events, for, food festivals. Not that you're having direct guests, but, understanding how to manage that. But let's think weddings and receptions and a variety of other social events like that. So, oh my gosh, a couple of years ago, there's a planner out of Dallas who posted on his Facebook page a wedding invitation, and the RSVP card on the back said, check here if you have any of these allergens. And they were random allergens, kind of really focused on the bride's allergens, I think, or the ones that she knew of her family. But she actually asked that, and he was flabbergasted that they asked that on a wedding invitation reply card. But I think it's a necessary thing to do, because you still need to know that. And because, I'm sorry, you're inviting all these people to your wedding, and the last thing you want is 4 weddings or 1 wedding and one funeral to accommodate, to handle that person. But there's a lot of registration systems that help with weddings that people can RSVP online. But without that kind of system, I suggest that you ask your client, who's the one organizing the event, to send an email to all of the attendees and saying, as we plan the menu, we want to make sure that we have options for everyone that's eating with us. So please send, if you've got any dietary restrictions, food allergies, medical conditions, religious, send your information to this name and number, Tracy at thrivemeetings.com, right? And she will make sure that we've got something for you to eat at that event. So it really is putting the onus on the person, the attendee that's coming, but making sure that the meeting planner or organizer is communicating that information out. So I hope that helps. It does make it a little bit more precarious. But another thing that my friend Tony Conway, in a cab ride to one event one day, he owns Legendary Event Catering in Atlanta. He had a really good way of putting it too. You as the person ordering the food or the catering company, you need to say to your client, based on our experience, probably about 30% of your attendees are going to have some sort of dietary need. So let's talk about those needs, and let's design your menu around some of those needs so that we actually already have options for them because you haven't asked, or while we're waiting for you to ask. And then that way, your menu is designed already to meet needs before you even go through it, and before you actually have to, do some personalized plates. And maybe you can eliminate some of those personalized plates because you've already designed that menu. But you have to be proactive if you're a hotel salesperson or catering salesperson, or even a third-party planner who's working with the client who's bringing their guests in. From your experience, that we've got a dietary need. So let's plan accordingly beforehand to eliminate as many as we can up front. Okay, so that's the next question. I got 5 more minutes. And one of the questions that I got, and I've gotten this question a lot too, is from a planner who said, okay, not to sound cold and heartless, but I've had this question asked a lot, but if you have so many dietary needs, why don't you just bring your own food or go out and get your own food? We have meeting planners have enough on their plates trying to feed the masses, especially when so many people don't have allergies, but they just have a want or a need, like, that I don't like mayonnaise or I don't like that. If you're a cold-natured person, bring a sweater to the meeting room, right? Well, yes and no. So the way this is hard. It is really hard. Planners, you do have a lot of stuff on your plate to manage, including managing food allergies. But if Terry, I'm just going to use her name. Terry's coming to a conference for 3 days, and she's coming across country, and she gets an email, luckily gets an email from somebody saying, hey, we're not going to provide for you at this event. And she actually already has this worry on her brain. Anybody who has a dietary need has this worry on their brain. When I go out, am I going to be able to have something to eat? We're networking at this event, and it's a cocktail reception, or it's an awards dinner, or it's breakfast, and you're feeding us. Am I going to be able to eat? And if I can't eat, what am I packing in my purse or my suitcase? So a lot of us bring our own extra bag of food in a suitcase. So we might be checking an extra bag, or our carry-on bag is overfilled with food. does the hotel have a refrigerator in it? Does the hotel have a microwave in it so that I can heat up any of my food that I have? Or are there any restaurants around the hotel or convention center that I can actually get something to eat that meets my needs? So you've just now elevated the level of additional research that this person has to do, and or additional baggage checking or packing that this person has to do because of that. And, as a meeting planner, you have a duty of care to ensure the safety of your attendees. And you had that duty of care before COVID. You have it, I think, is exemplified now because of COVID, because of cleaning practices. And, is this a safe hotel? Is this a safe convention center? How are people going to get there? Are people going to be masked, et cetera? But you have a duty of care to ensure the safety of your attendees. And that does include the food that you serve. And because eating, as well as all of our bodily functions, were added to the list of major life activities under the Americans with Disabilities Act, individuals who have food allergies and individuals who have celiac disease or diabetes or are about to have a kidney transplant and need to eat a specific way, they all now have civil rights protections under the Americans with Disabilities Act. They have a disability because if they eat something that could potentially kill them or harm them, they're covered. So that adds to your duty of care. And that may not be the answer that you want, but there are ways that you can actually simplify your processes. And let me know how I can help you, because I can. There are ways to design your menus and to design your event registration systems so that it takes that headache and that stress of planning all these meals. I did an event in Vegas years ago. We had 683 people with dietary requests. I did one in January. We had 600 attendees and 200 of them had dietary needs. And we only had to serve 35 personalized plates at that event because we designed the menus so that people could walk through the buffet, even the vegans and the vegetarians. So you're not cold-hearted. You're not cold and heartless. You have a lot on your plate, and there's ways to do it without making you feel that you are and without stressing you out. So those are 3 of, I think, 16 to 20 questions that I got. Check out my website, thrivemeetings.com, and under blog, and I'm going to be answering each one of these questions as a separate blog post. So see those weekly coming up. Check out the Meetings Today website to watch the webinar that I did give, Food 101, how to manage attendee dietary needs from A to Z. And reach out to me. I am at Tracy at thrivemeetings.com. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.